This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Here's your host, Brandon Contes.
Alrighty, welcome to episode 61 of the Awful Announcing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Contes, and this week we are joined by Chris Haynes, NBA insider for TNT and Bleacher Report. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. Are you aware that this is actually your second appearance on the Awful Announcing Podcast, I was told?
No, I've come on before. I can't remember who the host was.
Well, yeah, definitely was not me. I only started about a year and a half ago, but so I was told it was about I think 5 or 6 years ago. Damn. Ben Heisler was the host at the time. And he, up until about 5 minutes before you guys started recording, he thought that the interview was going to be with Chris Haynes of MSNBC. And I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Haynes, but I'm going to guess that's not a person that you get mistaken for a lot. So he had about 5 minutes then to prep. I was told that the interview ended up going well. To be honest, I didn't listen to it. Just the fact that, he thought it was Chris Haynes from MSNBC, and then last minute found out that it was you.
Oh, man.
Hey. On the other hand, I've known that I was going to be interviewing Chris Haynes, so I have prepared.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I prepared to interview Chris Haynes. I was eager to have you on, especially with all the NBA on TNT stuff, but plenty to discuss. Let's begin there, because yesterday we're recording this.
Before you get in, B.
Yeah,
I got a miniature story about Chris Haynes. So,
oh really?
I want to say about 4 years ago, he tweeted at me. He was watching I forgot what show I was on. Maybe I was. Oh, it was a sideline. I was doing a sideline. I was working the game, and he tweeted that he was watching the game, and automatically, instantly, he just got an anxiety, like a anxiety attack. And the reason why, he just heard somebody saying, "Hey, now on the floor, we're going down to Chris Haynes. Chris, what you got?" And he just felt like they were talking to him, but he was like, "I'm not there." Like, he's just. So he tweeted that at me. But we've been trying to do something together, just maybe a solo pod, because I get, obviously, him being in that world and the politics spectrum.
Yeah.
I get a lot of his hate tweets on accident. And vice versa. He may get some tweets asking about some random trades or anything going to happen. So we've been trying to think about trying to do something together.
Wow, that's very funny. Well, if you need somebody to kind of help pull it all together, I'm sure Ben Heisler, who prepared for Chris Haynes and ended up interviewing you, I'm sure he'd be the perfect candidate for the gig, and we could try to set that up. So I want to start with Barkley. We're recording this Wednesday, and just yesterday, Barkley canceled his retirement plans. Announced that he's going to stay with TNT. I'll ask, do you believe that he is now committed to TNT and not looking to retire?
Yeah, I believe so. Obviously, he had talks with upper management since his retirement declaration. He went on a media tour even after that. Kind of doubling down on that. And so it seems like, just the way it seemed like his course kind of went in a different direction, it's just obvious that he was able to sit down with upper management and hash some things out, talk some things out to where he reversed course, and now he's staying. He has a long-term contract. He's always had that. So, I understood the frustration that he was facing. He's somebody who, I've been on the road with him many times, and he's a joy to be around, as most would expect. He really gets along with his coworkers. He really gets close. Every time I see him, he's always asking about my family, and he names them individually. He knows their names. There's friends that I bring along with me to All-Star Weekend every single year, and we always seem to get with Chuck, and he knows their names individually. So, he's a guy that really felt this blow. months ago, we didn't know for sure. It wasn't definite. The tea leaves were kind of there, but I think he was trying to, as one person who probably could get away with it, he was probably trying to speak for everyone as far as voicing his frustration. So there's no surprise though with him recommitting to TNT. I think it's good. You want to keep that crew together.
I'm pretty sure it was after Game 4 of the NBA Finals when Barkley announced his plans to retire after next season, and at the time he said it was regardless of what was going to happen with the NBA's media rights deals. When did you learn about Barkley's retirement announcement that night? Like, did you see it live? Did you see it on social media after?
I was right there, so I wasn't on set, but I was standing off to the side because I was waiting for Chris Miles, who was the host, who was hosting that segment where Barkley was on. So I was waiting for him off to the side. So I seen it right there, seen it live, and I was shocked for sure.
So he didn't, to your knowledge, at least, he didn't inform anyone he was going to make that announcement. That just kind of came right there, raw and off the cuff.
Yeah, raw and off the cut. That's Chuck. I think Kenny stated it on a podcast a few months ago that he didn't inform them as well. So, that was just Chuck, basically stating his feelings, and there was frustration. I think again, like being at the NBA Finals, you're with the crew extensively, and he's probably he was hearing the concerns and the fears of his coworkers, and I think he felt as the face of the TNT NBA sports brand, I think he felt that he should say something, I should say. And so, I don't know what was in his head as far as the state of retirement at that point, but
sure,
definitely there was a lot going on behind the scenes.
Was it discussed at all off camera that night afterwards?
Oh, for sure. I mean, if my memory recall correctly, that was after Game 4. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was after Game 4.
So it was after Game 4. Yeah, and so I mean that was the talk. That was the talk. It was the game was pretty much secondary at that point. That was the talk. I mean that came out of nowhere, and Chuck is a national treasure, man. He's like, people always ask me, what is Chuck like off camera?
Yeah.
Like he's the same with just a little bit more cuss words. Chuck is Chuck, man. He is really like, I'm telling you, like the reason why he's great, I'm talking about him in particular, the whole crew is great together as a collective. But Chuck really could be a stand-up comedian if he wanted to. Like he has one-liners and jokes that just come off the fly. And to be able to be great on TV, you have to be kind of witty with it. You got to be kind of quick. And Chuck is exactly that. And so, that was, like I said, that's why that news became the primary focus that night, because nobody thought, if anything, you thought, okay, if TNT lost the TV rights, if anything, you thought, okay, you have at least one more year to see the crew, to see Chuck. You didn't think that would be it, at that point. So, it was that was a blow for sure.
What has it been like being able to get to know Barkley over the last couple of years? Great.
The whole crew, man. Like I've been indebted to them. Chuck is somebody who's always going to keep it real. He's always going to be solid with you. He's going to have a joke for you. He's going to get on your tire. That's Chuck. Shaq is somebody who has always had ideas. He's pitched some ideas to me, some show concept ideas to me. Always a guy who's just thinking outside the box. Kenny is like, I was in Atlanta to do some TNT work, and they always put us up into the Four Seasons Hotel. So that's where mostly all the staff stay at. And so Kenny was in town at that juncture. And I was sitting with my wife at the time. No, actually, my wife and my two oldest daughters, because they attend Clark Atlanta University, HBCU. Okay. So they attend there. So we're sitting there having dinner, and Kenny comes over, gives me some dap. I introduce him to the wife and kids, and that was that. He takes off, goes to the other side. And so I'm getting ready to check out, and the waitress lets me know, I'm sorry, that gentleman over there took care of your bill. And, so just, things like that, man, just cool people. And Ernie Johnson. So EJ, I remember it was like my first couple of games doing sidelines for TNT. Prior to that, I had no sideline experience. I worked at ESPN. I was on SportsCenter. I was on FS1 with Skip and Shannon at the time. But there's one thing about doing stand-ups. There's one thing about being in the studio, but there's another thing. There's another element about being in a packed arena, 20,000 fans screaming. You got a producer in your ear. They tell you, go on, you're live. And then in your ear, they tell you like the first, you'll start off, my face will start off on camera the first 7 seconds. And then they say, okay, you're off. But that doesn't mean stop. That means keep going. And I have to get off the court because I start my hit on the court. You have to hurry up and walk off the court because they're starting play. And you got to keep going. And so I was having trouble with that initially. Again, I've never done it before to that point. And out the blue, I've never received a call from this individual, never before, never had contact with him at all. Ernie Johnson sends me a text. He said, hey, we love what you're doing. We love what you bring to the table. Just keep being you, kid. We're watching you. I'm supporting you. You got this. That meant the world to me, man. Yeah. I've never talked to EJ before, ever. Not at least not like on a phone conversation or anything like that. So for him to reach out like that, send me a text, that meant the world to me, man. I was just on cloud nine at that point. So I just say all that just to tell you about like that crew. They are really a special crew, individually and collectively. And so I'm glad. Well, I hope they can continue on for years and years down the road.
Is that an exciting role, the sideline reporting? Is that something like, are you able to feed off the energy, or is it more nerve wracking?
For sure. It's it can be nerve wracking depending on the game, but no, it's definitely something that I feed off of. I find myself when the national anthem is being sung, I find myself like kind of like jumping. I'm fidgety, like feel like I'm about to play, because I know I have a hit coming up, and sometimes I know that hit is going to be fire. And so I'm just excited to hurry up and get this hit off, because I want to see how I drop this. But Brandon, and another element to it is that what attracted me to the role was that I was going to be able to do what I do, which is break news, or those conversations, those text message conversations I may have with some of the top players, LeBron James, Chris Paul, Steph, Dame, opposed to writing or opposed to tweeting that breaking news or whatever. This was a new medium for me to do it in this form. I haven't seen that done really to that extent. And when TNT offered me the job initially, I didn't have much interest in the role because, coming from a reporter like who's in the trenches, really in the trenches, digging up news and unearthing certain subject matters. When I would see sideline reporters, I didn't see like when they would report things, they would report things that I already knew about. That was already out. And from the casual fan, it may be news to them, but I know that, okay, the coach said that this morning to everybody. LeBron said that yesterday to everybody. And so I didn't, me and my, the way I view it, the way I look at news, I didn't see much value in it. But then Tara August, who brought me on over there at TNT, she said, no, we want you to do it your way. Like the news you break it during the broadcast. Those conversations, those text message conversations you have, those phone conversations you have with some of the top players, reveal that and relay that on air during the broadcast. And so when she pitched it like that, I was like, oh, that might be cool. That might be cool. And so to answer your question, sorry to be being long-winded.
No worries.
No, it did become a thrill. It did become a joy to be able to work and do my job in a different light, on a different medium. So no, I've been ecstatic. I've been trying to, learn and get better because again, that wasn't my background. I didn't work for a NBA team, college team doing that before. I learned on the fly. And so that's kind of how my career has been. But I've had fun. It's definitely been a joy.
Who was the toughest person to interview on the sideline?
Kawhi, probably. Kawhi. I've never had a bad experience with Kawhi, really.
Yeah.
But with Kawhi, you have to, some guys, you ask a question and then they'll answer it, and they wouldn't be long-winded, but they'll answer it in a decent amount of time where you might have a follow-up to that. Sometimes with Kawhi's answers, they're quick. And so you don't really have time to digest it. You just go into your next question, but it's important to have a next question.
Right.
Because if you're waiting to get a follow-up off of his answer, you might be waiting for a while, and that'll make for bad TV. So guys that are pretty quick with their responses, you got to have, usually they say 3 questions. And if we have more time and if the interview is good, 4 is a max. So with somebody like Kawhi or anybody else that may be short-winded with their answers, you got to kind of already have 3 questions already lined up.
Yeah. I want to go back to inside the NBA for a second. You've watched them from afar, and then now you've gotten to watch them up close. What makes that studio show, that crew, so special and so unique?
Well, Chuck, obviously, just being somebody who can roast and just be a stand-up comedian on the fly, somebody you don't take too seriously. You want to watch him. I grew up with a lot of elder statement in my family. And I'm somebody who I like listening to them because they seem to come up with some lines that you wouldn't even think of. And that's what Chuck is. I think he's kind of like everybody's TV grandpa. He doesn't say everything. He doesn't say everything right, or he doesn't say things that are politically correct. You may say it. You may kind of be, I don't know, taken back a little bit, but then you kind of brush it off. Well, that's just Chuck. There's very few people in this society, especially in today's world, where that can say something that might not be viewed favorably by the masses, but then you brush it off as no, that's Chuck. Very few people that have that. And I think that just speaks to his personality, his demeanor, and who he is. Ernie is the point guard of the show. He's somebody who over time, he started, taking little pot shots. And then when he does take pot shots at his crew, you like it, you love it, because that's probably not originally in his nature to do so. But he does a great job of just steering the ship. Kenny comes off as the voice of reason, right? He's going to let Chuck and Shaq go at it whenever they want to go at it, but then he comes in as the voice of reason. But then his stick of, running to the board. People. I know a lot of people say, well, why is that funny? Why is it funny every single time? I don't care. I don't know why it's funny every single time, because then he gets challenged, and then people just want to see how Kenny runs. And so everybody just has this just comedic, comedic form to them. And then Shaq, when he came on, people wondered, how was he going to fit? Yeah. It was already a 3-headed monster, and it worked. It was great. So you brought Shaq into the fold. How was it going to fit? It took some time for him to gel with the crew, but it worked. It's great. It's a 4-headed monster now. Shaq has the comedic timing as well, very similar to Chuck, where he can just throw a one-liner. They asked me on, when I did my hit on Inside the NBA, they asked me about if I'm still playing basketball. And I say, yeah, I'm still playing basketball right now. I'm in a Filipino league, and I'm the 2-time MVP of this Filipino league back home in Sacramento. Shaq off the cup just calls me, Manny Blackout. You know what I mean? So it's things like that where they're just really quick with it. And that's what makes them go individually. And that's what makes them go together. So Again, hopefully they can stay together for years down the road.
What do you expect from them this year, though? Just at least knowing that it's their last year on TNT, even if they stay together as a crew, but knowing that this is their last year on TNT.
I expect them to go all out. I expect that this is going to be the farewell tour in this state. That is, again, yes, they can rebrand and do a different show and keep the crew together. But in this state, this is going to be a farewell tour, and I expect them to just go out blazing, because again, it's for those people behind the scenes that are going to be affected mostly. So I think it's going to be bittersweet for sure, because you're getting one more year left in this form, but there's going to be people that a lot of individuals or most individuals don't know of that's going to be affected, that has to make life-changing decisions. And so I feel for them, but no, I expect the show to be a blast as always.
And what about you? Obviously, you're also working with Bleacher Report, but what's your status with TNT right now?
I'm weighing the situation, and so as of right now, I'm looking into seeing what are the possibilities. Obviously TNT has the contract for one more year with the NBA. Then after that, we have to, you got to really start looking. Amazon and NBC coming into the fold, and I know TNT has that lawsuit that's out there right now. So it's just a lot to think about for me as well. What is the right move to make? When is the right time to make a move? All these things are being considered. So but I'm not worried about myself. There are people who, these jobs are far and few, and it's also like that for people who do great work behind the scenes. So I'm more so concerned about them.
You've been with Yahoo, ESPN, TNT, local beat, national. Is it important for an insider to be associated with a larger brand like the NBA on TNT or NBC or Amazon, or do you think at this point in your career, and the way social media is, that like, could you be independent of those brands?
Yeah, you could for sure be independent, for sure. I mean, you look at somebody like Mark Stein, you look at Shams, you could definitely be independent of those large TV networks that you mentioned. It helps for sure if you're associated with them, because they also have a large following, they have a large base, and that they're going to try to utilize and maximize you as a talent to add and lend some credibility to their staff. But no, in this day and age, I don't think you necessarily need that outlet if you're already an established entity.
How does the national beat compare with local? Do you miss being a local reporter at all?
No. No. I mean, local reporting is a grind, man. It's a grind. So my first year covering the NBA as a local beat writer covering the Portland Trailblazers was the 2011-12 season. And that was the lockout season. So it was 66 games, and there were back-to-backs, numerous back-to-back games. Prior to that, again, I'll tell you about how my career, I just learned on the fly in front of everybody. Back-to-back, I was, prior to that year of getting that job, I worked for a year for free. So during the morning, I would work as a security guard at a high school, and at night for Slam Online, I would write for free. But basically, it was just getting me credentialed, getting me some experience, so I can have some writing material, so I can get better, try to hone in on my craft. So I did that for a year before, at the time, it was Comcast Sportsnet Northwest, which aired all the Blazer games back in Portland. They ended up hiring me the next year to be their beat writer. So again, a year of just working for free, honing my craft, no experience prior to that, and then jumping into the fray where I'm traveling. I've never traveled before, never really flew on planes before. So now I'm traveling to every Blazer game, and I'm on TV 2 to 3 times a week. And so that year, going back to back to back, having games back to back. So I remember one road trip. Again, I'm not familiar with the airports. I'm not familiar with how to get around. I remember there was a back to back to back. They played in Atlanta. I believe I was in Atlanta, and then I had to get to Toronto. And so my only experience before that of going to Canada when I was in college, we played a team in Canada. I played college ball.
Yeah.
So we played a team in Canada, but we drove into Canada. And at that time I had this, I don't know if they make these now, but it's a passport card. It's not a book. It's a passport card. And that passport card only allows for you to drive into Canada. You can't fly. You have to fly into Canada with a passport book. I didn't know that. So I got this card and I'm in Atlanta and they play. Again, these are back to back to back. So I have to fly into Toronto the day of the game. Then they inform me that this card is no good. I only could drive to Canada. And I'm like, that does me no good right now. I'm in Atlanta. I can't drive to Canada. So long story short, they ended up booking me a flight to Buffalo. So I flew into Buffalo. It's a blizzard. I'm from California. I ain't used to all this snow and stuff. There's a blizzard going on. They're talking about what's those chains you put on tires? I don't know anything about chain. So they was like, you're going to need it. I didn't do it because I probably wouldn't know how to put the chain on the tire. So real talk, B, I got to Buffalo. Snow is pouring. I make my way. I got in there. Drove to Toronto. I think that's about 2 hours something drive, maybe longer with the snow. And I made it. And that year, I did not miss a game. Somebody who's never traveled before, never really been in airports before, didn't know how passports work or what you needed. I made it. And then on my way back, had to drive after the game, drive back to Buffalo to return the car, and then fly to my third and final game of that back-to-back road trip. So, I don't miss. I say all that to say I don't miss the beat. Like, you got to be everywhere every single day. You're on one team. I like dipping around. I can go all around the country. I like, my schedule is never the same. I like that.
Yeah.
I like I remember what drew me initially to wanting to be a national reporter is that when I was on the beat, I would see when national reporters would come to town, and I would see how the teams would just roll out the red carpet for them, and they would just get all type of access. They would get whatever interview they wanted. Meanwhile, the beat guys who work every day, they had to look and just watch up close how they were getting access that beat guys or women were not getting. And I was like, damn, why is that? So I was studying the game for a minute until I realized, okay, I think that's my next move. So that's what ultimately got me on that path of becoming a national guy.
Yeah, you have one of the most unique origin stories of anybody in sports media. You graduate from Fresno State, not with a journalism degree. Yeah. Then you eventually moved to Portland. You were later in your 20s at that point, so it's not even like the 22-year-old coming out of Syracuse or something like that. When you went to Portland, because you said you ended up working for free for a year, did you go to Portland for that job, or did you get that job after you went to Portland?
Well, you're calling it a job when when I'm not getting paid. I get your point. I get the premise, but
is that why you moved to Portland though?
Yes, it was. So when I was at Fresno State, I got my degree in kinesiology. I wanted to be a PE teacher / coach, basketball coach. But it was my last semester at Fresno State, I realized, this might not be what I want to do. And really, it was an African-American writing class that I had to take. I had to take a writing class my last semester, prerequisite for graduation. And I was not a writer. I'm telling you, back then, I didn't know. I'm 26 at the time. Back then, I didn't know the difference between they are, their, you are, your. Like, it was that bad. And so I took this writing class, And I love talk, I love African American history. And so I'm turning in these articles on whatever assignment, whatever the subject matter is, and I'm getting good feedback from my professor. And so I'm getting good feedback. I'm like, okay, I like this. I like storytelling. And I love basketball. I love the NBA. So I was like, man, let me see if this translates over to writing, if I can write about the league. And so I would watch NBA games from home, and I would just start writing. And I would send my copies to different online publications. And make a long story short, Slam Online, Slam Magazine were one of the ones that said, hey, you have potential. We can work with you, but we need you in the NBA market. I'm from Fresno, born and raised in Fresno, California. We need you in the NBA market, and we'll credential you. We can't pay you, but we'll credential you, and you can build a resume. So I gravitated with that. And so I was like, forget what I got my degree in. I'm going to try to chase this. So I had to convince the wife. I had 2 kids at the time. No, I had 3. I had 3 daughters at the time. So I had to convince my wife, like, can we try to do this? Can I chase this for a few years? She no at first, and ultimately decided to go. And so now it was like, okay, I'm from Fresno, been here most of my life. I don't know anything really other than that. I don't want to go too far. So, because if I fail, I want it to be a smoother transition to get back home. So Sacramento was where I'm based here now, but Sacramento, I played at Sacramento Junior College. So before that, so I been to Sacramento already. I didn't want to go back. LA was too big for me. I was like, there's no way I wouldn't, I mean, just thinking about it, there was no way I can go and function. And so the other closest market was Portland, which is a 12-hour drive. And so I'm like, I can do that. Because I was always thinking if I were to fail, it's 12-hour drive, I can get back. I can make it, can make it work. So yes, that is why I chose Portland. I chose Portland because LA was too big. Sacramento, I've been there, done that. And yeah, that's why I chose to go out to Portland to pursue that dream.
Did you recognize like how much the odds were stacked against you at that point, just being in your mid to late 20s with little experience, the fact that this is such a competitive industry, it's dominated by largely white males, like it's to go there and then become successful, and one of the now you're one of the most successful and recognized reporters in the NBA. To think of, where you started at that point when you were moving to Portland, like did any of this seem like a legit possibility to you? Were you almost, or were you at all even naive to how much the odds were stacked against you?
Probably naive, because I was just excited that I would be credentialed for NBA games.
Yeah.
So this is a young man at the time who I've never been to an NBA game before. I've been to a WNBA game when the Sacramento Monarchs used to play in Sacramento, but I've never been to a Kings game, I've never been to a Laker game. So all this was just me like fulfilling a dream and being there, and just couldn't believe that I would be in the locker room. Couldn't believe that I would be this close to NBA players. And so I just looked at it as we're going on an adventure. That's the way I looked at it. We're going on an adventure, and I'm going to do my best to try to maximize whatever I can get out of this situation. So that's the way I looked at it. I didn't know, because I didn't know going in, like what I wanted to do, what I wanted to become. I just wanted to go in there and try to do a great job. And it happened so fast, even that year. Like I think like midway in the season, I just gained some inroads with players where they were giving me like really good exclusive content. And that's how I really started. Comcast Sportsnet, they had a show called Talking Ball. It was a pre and post game show they had on before and after Blazer games. And a producer by the name of Adam Willis, who was the producer for that show, he reached out to me. He started seeing like how I was getting these getting these stories and players opening up. He reached out to me, B, about coming on Talking Ball. B, I'm being dead honest with you, man. Like, I celebrated like crazy. It wasn't no pay involved, but I've never done TV before. So now they're asking me to come in. Like, I feel like I made it. And so meanwhile, that year working for free, people might have thought like I'm actually earning a salary. I'm not getting anything. I'm not getting it. So B, but I did that show, Talking Ball, and I'm being honest with you, B. I don't care what nobody says. I bombed it. I bombed it. I got pictures of me being on the show that day, and my posture, like I'm leaning on the desk, and like I don't have like it just looks bad. And at the time too, we were talking about subject matters. They were talking about the salary cap space, and that wasn't my expertise. Then I could get away with talking about it now, but then so I was like dancing around it, not really. I was like a politician. They ask you a question, you ask a politician a question, they don't really answer it, they just get the other talking points. Like I was doing that before it became popular in politics. And so, but after that show, B, my wife took me, I believe it was the Applebee's, and I just broke down crying, bro. I broke down crying right there in Applebee's. I broke down crying because I felt like that was my one opportunity, and I blew it. I felt that the way that I felt about my performance, I felt that it was obvious to any and everybody else that saw that I blew it. And I felt like that was my last opportunity, my only opportunity. And I remember later on when they ended up hiring me, I told Adam Willis about that story. And I told him like how I felt. He was like, "What? You felt like that?" He was like, "No, we always had plans to bring you back. Nah, like you were cool." And so, that's when I knew, when they offered to bring me on a few times during that year of working for free, that's when I knew I had a possibility. And at that time, the possibility to make it, I should say. And at that time, Comcast Sportsnet, they didn't have a beat writer. So I was getting word from Dwight James, who was a columnist there, who was actually a longtime columnist in that Portland market. He's been doing it since the 70s. He was a columnist for the station. He was the one that pitched them the idea to bring me on.
Yeah.
He used to be in my ear telling me, "Hey, I'm hearing word that they're going to hire a beat writer. So stay on top of your game, stay on point. Just know that." And so that's when I knew, man, damn. Shit, like I might be able to do this. And it happened the following season.
How are you perceived by other reporters and writers that first year when you were working for free? Like, obviously they didn't necessarily know what your salary was, or that you didn't have a salary, but just going in there without much experience, how are you perceived by others?
Yeah, it was tough. Obviously, they look at you as somebody like, who are you? What dues have you paid? Where are you coming from? So, yeah, I had those. I had those people who looked at me like that. And, it wasn't really that pleasant of an experience from that standpoint. But I had some great older OGs like Dwight James and Kerry Edgars, who's also a long-time sports columnist there, has been there, I believe, since the 70s as well, still there in that market. Guys like that, they really looked out for me. And I remember, B, like before I moved to Portland, all I wanted to do, B, is cover the NBA. Still to this day, watching college basketball, unless it's really elite NBA type talent on the squads, I don't like watching college basketball. I'm just being honest. I don't. A lot of times, to me, it's bad basketball. Others may disagree and call it pure basketball, whatever. I just don't like it. And so I didn't want to cover high school or basketball or college basketball. I wanted to cover the NBA. And I remember before I moved to Portland, I was asking, I would call around. I don't know how I got access and contacts to these individuals, but I remember calling Mark Spears. I remember calling Stephen A. Smith, calling David Aldridge, a couple other people. And I would ask them, like, okay, how can I get to covering the NBA? This is what I want to do. And they gave me really sound advice, but it wasn't wrong advice, but it was advice that stemming from their history, how they came up. So they would tell me, well, first you got to cover high school sports, do that at a newspaper for 3 or 4 years. Then you move on to a college beat, dominate that beat for 4 years, then it can be looked at as a potential candidate to cover the NBA. And so I'm looking at B. So I tell you, I'm like 27 at the time of graduating from Fresno State. So I'm I'm like, oh, hold on. So I got to be damn near 40 years old before I get to cover the NBA. And so I had no aspirations to do that. But again, their information wasn't wrong. It was just the path that they came up under.
Yeah.
Well, coming up in the social media era where you have social media, people become visible and seen off of their social media feeds. You have blogs, you have online websites like Slam Online, and a plethora of others. You have YouTube, where if you want to be a TV personality, a TV presence, you can show that on YouTube. So you have all these different mediums at your disposal where you can showcase your skill set now, opposed to having to do it through the traditional route of newspapers. And so that is what helped me, because definitely, man, my path is not possible 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not possible back then. It probably became possible like right around the time where I decided I wanted to pursue this. Yep. And so it helped me. And so definitely I came into that market with people, looking at you like, who are you? What are you doing? And again, I'm writing on the fly. I'm still learning how to structure my writing. I'm still learning the inroads of how to do this. And so my writing is being put out there, and all my flaws, and I remember Comcast Sportsnet, even when I was working with them, the first year and a half, the comments are open. You know what I mean? Like, there's open comments. And so people are not, I found in the first year or so, people weren't commenting on my stories a lot. They were commenting on my grammatical errors.
Yeah.
Who is this? And I seen all type of comments be, who is this guy? I can write way better than this guy. Who they get, who is Chris Haynes? What is it? Comments like that. And they used to bother me like crazy. But the one thing, B, that I would say to myself is, yes, there were better technical writers out there. There were more experienced writers out there. But I guarantee you, they couldn't get the interviews that I could get back then. I guarantee you they couldn't get the content that I could get, which is the hardest part. So, okay, you're a great writer, but you don't have anything to write about. You don't have anything that nobody wants to read. I mastered that at that time, at that point. And from there, it was about me improving my craft and improving my writing to where it can match up with the content that I'm getting based off of the relationships that I've established. So yeah, it was tough initially going into there, but it was something I probably needed.
How did you build those relationships, and how did you earn the respect and trust from players that you were somebody they could talk to?
B, is still word of mouth when it comes to the NBA, and I'm pretty sure it's still word of mouth as it pertains to the NFL, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, or whatever. And when I say word of mouth, players talk to each other. They talk to each other. They talk to other players about what reporter to talk to, what reporter is going to screw you, and all that. And so, anyways, I'm a very observant person. So, especially going into that year of working for free, I remember when I went into a locker room, and one thing that I saw when I first would go into a locker room, first of all, I'm checking out how everybody does their job, and for the most part, I would see reporters just go into the locker room as soon as it's open. Player may be changing at the locker stall. Player may just be sitting down with earphones on, listening to music. And I would see reporters just go right up to a player and shove a mic in their face and start asking questions. And I would see the player's reaction from that. And I would see this time and time again to the point where players started knowing, okay, we know when the media is going to be allowed in. We're going back there for treatment. We're going to ignore, avoid the media. And so I saw that. And I was like, man, I don't want to come across like, I don't want to be lumped in that boat. And so what I did was, obviously, you have to do your research on the players you're covering anyway. And so I would, do research, see where they're from, if they have family, what their beliefs are, and blah, blah, blah. And I would go in there and I would just start having conversations with guys, like getting to know them getting to know me. And plus, I'm the only brother in that Portland market too. So they were already a little curious about what my story was anyways. Yeah. And so, I started building relationships that way, to where I'm just talking with them, having a conversation. How's the wife? Talking about, real shit. And so then when it got to the point, so relationships were established. And then when it got to the point being when I actually had to ask a question, they would just give me gold because, we were solid. They would, and so how people can say there's not a bad question. There are bad questions. There are bad questions, there are average questions, and there are good questions. And I found out, even still today, that I, based off of the relationships I have with certain guys out there, I can ask an average question, maybe even a bad question, and they will give me gold. And it's based off of how comfortable they are with me. It's based off of the relationships. It's based off of the history of me never burning them. It's based off of those off the record conversations that we had that never saw the day of light. It's based off of that. And that's what I value. I value relationships. And that's not just pertaining to the NBA. I value relationships, period. Because you need relationships to, to be able to do my job, whether that's with general managers, owners, the commissioners, agents, family members, whatever. Your word is your bond. And so when I established that, players talk. And I remember when I was on the path to wanting to be a national NBA reporter, I thought to myself, well, I have to get to a bigger beat. I have to take that next step because, I'm grateful for what I was able to accomplish in Portland, but I got to get to a bigger beat. And this was 2014 when I started thinking that way. And then lo and behold, LeBron James leaves Miami, goes back to Cleveland. And then probably a few weeks after that, for whatever reason, the Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper, they released a lot of their staff on the sports side. And so now they were hiring. And so at that time, that's the biggest, I'm going to say that was the biggest beat opening that year by far, like that job. And it was like 1,000 applicants. And again, I had to convince the wife to move to Cleveland. Now, this time the convincing was a little bit harder because now we're going to the Midwest and we are not used to snow. We don't do snow. But I told her, I'm like, I think I got to take this next job, this next gig to get to that national level. Because I would tell her, like, as a national guy, you can be based anywhere. You just got to, be able to get to where you want to go when it's time for coverage. And so she was like, I'm giving you 2 years. Because she ended up falling in love with Portland, even though she didn't want to go initially. So she's like, I'm going to give you 2 years. She said, you got 2 years to get a national gig. If you don't, she said, me and the kids are moving back to California and you're staying here in Cleveland. So a little bit of pressure, B. A little bit of pressure. But that second year, Cavs won. They won the NBA championship. They came back and beat the Golden State Warriors, came back from that 3-1 deficit. And then during the finals, that's when I started having talks with ESPN. And the rest was history.
You went to Cleveland during LeBron's second tenure. So at that point, did he already have the reporters that he was comfortable with? Like, was it harder to build a relationship because you were a newcomer now during his second tenure in the market?
That's a great question, B. I tell people this all the time. Like, it is really difficult to establish relationships with players who are already established. Because if they're already established, they're already high-profile names. They have their circle of people who they trust already. They have their go-to reporters who they'll say, all right, give this information to, give this to. And so I will say this, Bron was very open. And I remember Dave McMenamin, who's at ESPN, he went the same year I went. He was covering the Lakers prior, then he went to cover Cleveland for ESPN that year. So it was a great group of us. It was me, Dave McMenamin, Joe Varden, who at the time worked at the paper with me, but we all came the same time. He was the LeBron reporter. Our paper came up with the LeBron reporter role, which was unprecedented. I've never heard of a role like that before. And you had Jason Lloyd, who worked at the Akron Beacon Journal at the time. And so it was a cool time, but Bron was very open. Like, Bron was very open and receptive, which surprised me. Because he was already proven the hottest commodity, the hottest player in the league, the face of the league. But no, it is like, but for, and I've, me and Chris Paul built a great relationship, and about three years ago. And, that's hard to do with guys who are that old. They know the lay of the land already. So yeah, that was tough. And that was a concern. But I felt that even though I'm taking another beat job, in many ways, this beat is a national beat because everybody wants to know what LeBron is doing. You had Kyrie Irving over there, Kevin Love. And so it worked. It worked. It definitely, LeBron, I tell people this all the time. There's a few players who I owe a debt of gratitude to for my career and just helping me get to where I was, get to where I am. Damian Lillard, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant. After that, I went to cover I was based in the Bay Area for ESPN and covered Steph, KD, Draymond, Clay. Like, I've covered as a beat guy, like some Hall of Famers. Like that was weird. And B, I know you ain't asking about this real quick, but when ESPN poached me and wanted me to be based in the Bay and being at, most of the Warrior games, I didn't like that. I didn't want to do that because I'm covering, this is in the height of their rivalry. And I know how people, even though I'm an independent journalist, right? I just knew how it would look to fans and players who I've established relationships with in Cleveland. Now that I'm going over there and try to establish a relationship with, Warriors players.
Yeah.
And like, that concerned me. Like, I did not want to do that. I did not want to do that. I ended up doing it, of course. And what happened? One of the first times there was media availability in the locker room for the Warriors, Draymond Green approached me, calling me a spy, and he was dead serious. Like, you a spy? Who sent you over here? The Cavs sent you over here to spy on us. We ain't talking to you. I'm gonna let everybody in here know we are not talking to you. And I had to tell Draymond about this, when we became, I guess, colleagues, at TNT. I'm like, do you remember you saying that to me, man? He was like, yeah, I remember. I was on, my bad. I was on one. Like, he was dead serious, but that just showed you how intense that rivalry was at the time. It was mutual respect, but it was some bad blood based off of the fact that they faced each other all the time. And so I was hesitant to take it because of that, but it was a great role. And, I'm coming from nothing. My first year when I got that first contract in Portland, my salary was $35,000, and I was ecstatic to make that. And so you can imagine what I made, going to ESPN at that time. So
a little bit more.
I had to bite the bullet, man.
Is it more important to cultivate relationships with players, teams, or agents? Who has the most information?
So we're talking about simply for information gathering purposes?
Yeah.
Breaking news?
Yeah.
General managers and agents, executives and agents. It depends. I mean, for me, I think those two go hand in hand, executives and agents.
So is it different for an insider versus a reporter? Like, as a reporter, was it more important to have relationships with players?
For a reporter, I think if you're on a beat, you have to have some type of rapport. You have to, because if you're the publication of record for that team. So I think it's in your best interest to have some type of rapport so you can have some original, creative, good content that resonates with your viewers that nobody else can get. So I think it definitely is important. Now, as a national guy, I wouldn't say it's not important because I still have valuable relationships with guys that I didn't cover on the beat. I still got valuable relationships with guys that are still forming, right?
Yeah.
Still being nurtured. So I wouldn't say it's not important, but I'm just not around guys like that on the daily. But I will say this, you were talking about the visibility of a national platform. That definitely does help when people see that you're on TV, you're on Sports Center, or you're doing the interviews at the end of a TNT game. And, players want to have great games. And when they have great games, they always envision having their walk-off interview. And so they see you're synonymous with that. And so they automatically know you. And so there's been a lot of times where I will show up to an arena and I've never had a conversation with this said player before. And that player would come up, hey, what's up, Chris? What's up? And come holler, you know what I mean? The relationship is already established because they already feel like they know me. So, that's where a platform definitely can help. But social media platform helps with that as well. Everybody follows you on social media. Everybody turns their instant notifications on when it's trade season or when it's free agent season because they want to know, are they being traded? Are they being moved? They want to know rumors. So social media helps with that as well. But, definitely I think, still player, forming player relationships is always going to be important. It's just that it's more difficult for me to get to those like I used to when I was on the beat.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're in competition with Woj and Shams?
Yes and no. I know there's only a few people who do what we do. So for that standpoint, yes, but no, in the fact that I know what stories I'm going to get, right? Like I know, like I think everybody has a lane, right? Everybody has a niche. Like I know before a story drops who's getting that story, or who has a 90% chance of getting that story. Now, there are some times where that 10% chance, I may take advantage of that and take it away somehow, backdoor channels or whatever. And so that's the way I view it. So I don't, to answer your question, more so, no, I don't view them as a competitor. I know that we do the same thing, but there are stories that I know I'm going to get, and there are stories that I know I have a chance of getting. So I just focus on that opposed to focusing on who else is pursuing that story.
So when you get a breaking news story, is it usually something that happens quickly, or is it something that you've been working on for days or weeks?
Yeah, it depends. It's it's a mix. It's a lot of stories. Unfortunately, I say, or a lot of stories that they come right then, where you didn't have no sign of it, you didn't know it was coming, you just go. And I say unfortunate because you don't have the proper time to write a story to it, to like put it out the way you would want to. Ideally, you want to break a story. I would say me. I don't know, other people may do their job a little bit differently, but ideally, I want to break a story with the story. I don't want to just break the news on Twitter because I can break the news on Twitter and then somebody else may come with other details on Twitter. And about time I come with the story, all the juices has been squeezed out already.
Yeah.
And now your company is not reaping the benefits of a breaking news story. It's still a breaking news story, but a lot of details and tidbits have already been put out on social media that the juice is all out about time the story comes. So that's why I say unfortunate. But there are stories that that's going to happen for a while. And that, there's a lot of them like that where you're just waiting. Okay. For example, a meeting is about to happen on Thursday. Say it's a Monday. Player is going to meet with the team. on Thursday or Friday. And I could report the player is going to meet with the team on Thursday and Friday, but then I tip off everybody. So now everybody is, okay, now they're on to it. Now they're waiting, opposed to waiting till Thursday and Friday happens and then finding out what happens from that meeting. Now that's a big story. Now I have all that. Now I can break news, player requests a trade, had a meeting with such and such team, wants to go to destination A, right? And so there are times where you have to kind of hold information and you kind of just monitor it throughout the whatever period it is. It might be a week period, it might be a 2-week period. And then there are times, B, where there are stories that there may be story developments that are ongoing, right? But you have a slim chance of breaking it. So then at that point, then it's like, okay, let me start putting out little tidbits, because I'm not going to break when it happens. Let me start putting tidbits out of, what I know. For an example, Paul George. I believe I was the first one to tweet out. I forgot how I phrased it. The Philadelphia 76ers are feeling great about their chances of stealing Paul George away. Like I started hearing, okay, I'm gonna tell you. So some players were telling me, hey, Paul George has notified us that he's gone. And if he's gone, because at that point Golden State was out.
Yeah.
So if he's gone, Philly was the only,
viable option.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I had to go and check in on that front, and I was told, it's looking really good, looking like. So I'm like, okay, got it. And so I didn't break Paul George to Philly, but I knew.
Right, kind of teased it.
Yeah, kind of teased it. So you kind of want to just get in front of it a little bit.
How much of what you hear would you say gets? Do you report? Like, can you put a percentage on it?
A lot of what you hear are leads. What you can report is if it's coming from that general manager. General manager is hitting you up about a trade. Agent who represents that said player is telling you he's signing with such and such, or requesting a trade, or wants, or getting an extension, whatever it may be. There are some sources, right, who are sources of authority. Now, there are certain stories that, like, even if it's coming from an agent or a general manager, they say the story. I'm trying to think, what's the story topic that will require? Okay, say a general manager of a team says that another player from a different team wants to come there. Report that. Well, I can't, you could be being used at that point.
Right.
I can't, what I mean? So from that standpoint, now I got to go to that other player. And I may go to the team that player is on and ask that team, like, hey, is this player, have they asked the requested to be out, or that player, that agent of that side? But if a general manager say, hey, we're signing such and such, we're signing blah, 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 or we're trading blah, blah, blah. Rich, you got high profile agents like Rich Paul, Jeff Schwartz, the list goes on and on, Aaron Goodwin, if they'll call you and want to put their name on it, we're signing with such and such. Those are easy calls. Those are easy calls. But it's the ones that you got to go do a little bit more clarifying. That take a little bit more time. Is
there one rumor that stands out as like the most crazy thing that you heard that never got reported? Like, did the Knicks come to you and say, "Oh, LeBron wants to come here"? Is there any example like that?
There was one that I did report. I was at ESPN. It's when the Warriors had KD, Steph, Draymond, Clay. They had the whole shebang. LeBron was about to be a free agent. And I reported that something along the lines that there was mutual interest from the Warriors and LeBron to come together. And immediately, like there was so much backlash, and it was like, that's crazy. That was no way. You know, it was just like negative backlash, and people didn't not believe in the report, and people just didn't want to see it for obvious reasons. I think I want to say LeBron, even on record a few years back, even confirmed that there was some interest back then. You know, it took a while, but those are one of those stories where it was like I knew, like, damn, like I knew it to be true first and foremost, but I also knew this would come with a lot of negative backlash, and that it likely wouldn't happen. So it's one of those scenarios like, okay, is this worth reporting? And I made the decisions, and my editors at the time made the decision that it's worth reporting because it's real.
Yeah.
There is genuine interest. And can it happen? It can. Possibility of it happen? Very slim. But the interest was real. And so it did what it did. But again, I remember LeBron came out a few years ago, kind of confirmed that there was interest back then, which would have been crazy because Kevin Durant was receiving all type of hell for joining. And then you get LeBron.
Yeah, no, that's one where the Warriors could have gotten LeBron. They could have went 82-0, and like they still would have been getting bashed by Skip Bayless. Speaking of Skip, how was you did make quite a few appearances on Undisputed with Skip and Shine, and this is when you were working with Yahoo.
Yeah.
How was that? You were in studio at times even. How was working with them?
Yeah, that was great. I went on Undisputed, I want to say about maybe 4 or 5 times a month. Like it was pretty frequent, probably about once a week, you know, when it was really consistent. You know, that was Skip's call. That was Skip's call. And I had nothing but a pleasurable experience working with Skip and Shannon. Like I was so let me tell you this. So when I was at ESPN, I would, you know, the only shows I would do was SportsCenter. Those are the only shows that I was on. And I remember, you know, sometimes they would bring me up to Bristol to do shows for days. You know, they bring you up to Bristol, and you're from morning to night. You're on all the SportsCenter shows, and you're there daily. But in the meantime, in between time, you're waiting in the control room. It's like a little meeting room, and they'll have it's like 10 different TVs on all different stations. You may have First Take on one TV. At that time, Dan Le Batard show was on one station, SportsCenter. But then they will have a couple TVs on Undisputed. And that's when I knew. I'm like, oh, they're watching each other. They're watching each other. Okay, they're watching the competition. And so when I left ESPN, went to Yahoo, and did the FS1 deal, same thing. They have a room where you wait at in LA, and about 10 different TVs, different channels, and they have ESPN's First Take on while Undisputed is on. And so I'm like, okay, this is they watching each other. Like this is how they are monitoring each other. And I remember leaving ESPN. You remember this, like there was concern about me leaving ESPN because obviously I've seen the stories of people leaving and disappearing. And
right, it's perceived as if you're leaving the pinnacle at that point. Like you made it to ESPN. Why would you leave?
Exactly, that's the pinnacle. Everybody wants to get to ESPN, and I certainly did. And so the reason why I left ESPN in 2016? No, 2018. I left ESPN because they wanted to keep me on the Warriors. They did allow for me to do national stuff, and you know, which I definitely appreciated, but they wanted to keep me on the Warriors. And they offered me a 3-year deal. Really good money. Yahoo offered me more at the time, but they offered me my full-time national role. I had say on who we hired on the NBA staff side. And even though it was a much better offer at Yahoo, more money, the role that I wanted, say on staff, I still considered staying because it's ESPN. And so when I went to I ended up taking Yahoo, of course, and then I ended up getting the FS1 deal. I was so relieved because, again, I go back to that room, having the TVs. I knew that I was still in the thick of things because I knew back at Bristol, they still got to see me. And that was a cool moment for me.
Yeah.
And that let me know that I made the right decision, because after that stint, I ended up getting on with TNT in the sideline role. So it worked out. I couldn't have seen it working out and playing out that way, but it worked out better than I expected.
What were Skip and Shannon like off camera? What was their dynamic like off camera? Even
it was cool. Those times it was cool. Like we would Skip is pretty quiet. I would say during a camera break, like commercial break, he would usually leave the desk and go off and talk to somebody. And I don't know if like a stage crew or something, but he would leave and he wouldn't stay there. Shannon would stay at the desk and he's talking. Shannon's just crazy, just talking and but it was cool. Like the whole experience was cool, and that's when it was kind of somewhat fresh.
Yeah.
And they were finding their footing. And it was great to be a part of that, man. Like I enjoyed it, man. Skip would call me on. That was Skip's call. I didn't have a relationship with Skip prior to that.
Yeah.
No relationship. So it's similar. It's like Ernie Johnson just reaching out the blue. That was Skip. Like, and so I got nothing but love for Skip for giving me that opportunity, and Shannon, me and Shannon, we still talk to this day. And me and Skip touched base probably about a month ago via text. I forgot what the
oh really
was. Yeah. So no, I mean I owe Skip definitely, and Shannon, because without both of them bringing me in or allow me to do me. And again, I come from a news breaking traditional reporter type role. You going on there, you got to kind of bring a little bit more personality. You can't come up there and be, and so it allowed, like, I'm crazy off camera. Like I'm crazy. Like if you watch me play, I'm in like 2 different basketball leagues. Like I'm cussing people out. I'm going at people. Like I'm crazy like that. And so that platform allowed for me to showcase my personality a little bit more, but still stay within. I know what I brought to the game, what I brought to the table is that I can tell you what I'm hearing and what is true. And now we can debate and go from there. And so I enjoyed my time.
Yeah, when I think of someone like when I think of Woj, it feels like he's almost addicted to breaking news. Like he can't accept being second on an NBA scoop. Your career, you've done sideline reporting, you've done altcasts, you've done podcasts, you've done long form interviews, you've been with Skip and Shannon, Sports Center. Like, do you see yourself as somebody who is a more well-rounded journalist and entertainer, or does breaking news still rank first and second in importance to your job?
It's very important. It's very important. I don't live and die by it, though. I think if you I don't want to just be viewed as just that. It's something that I do. It's something that I can do well, but I feel like I can bring other attributes to the table. And so, that's something that, again, like I came into this industry not really knowing what I wanted to do. And so I've kind of been, opportunities have presented themselves to me, and I just kind of try to take it to a sphere that I didn't see coming. And the companies that I work for, they've allowed me to experiment and and tinker with that. So no, I don't view myself as strictly a newsbreaker. It's something that I do, but I like telling in-depth stories. I like podcasting, because podcasting is another element where I get to kind of bring you inside of my world and tell you like where I was at when I broke this story, what it was like going to KD's house and interviewing him there, what it was like when LeBron James this past season, he had an injury. I believe it was a foot injury, and he was out for a few games. So this I'm talking about what I did for during TNT on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And so when he's hurt, he's not playing, right? And so when you're not playing, you don't have any media responsibilities. And so we always have these production meetings before the game, and they ask us, hey, any information on LeBron? And for the most part, you have to say, well, LeBron is out, so he's not going to tell you. He's not going to talk. But I always feel pressure to deliver something because, again, I want to make sure I want to be of value to the TV broadcast, to the game broadcast. And so I always feel pressure. That's just me. I always feel pressure to deliver something. I want to unearth something. I want to give you something. I want, whenever I come on and do a hit during the game, I want people to be, to kind of, sit back and take it in like, okay, what is Chris going to say? What is he going to report? And so I end up texting LeBron. I'm like, Bron, I know you don't talk. I know you're not talking. I know you've been out. I understand. I'm working this game. If is there anything you can tell me about this injury, I would appreciate it. If not, I understand totally. About 30 minutes later, I'm going to read the text verbatim. About 30 minutes later, maybe a little bit longer, he texts me back. You can go with this. With my injury, I have to be very strategic and smart on how I manage the rest of the season with my ankle/foot in order to get to the finish line, whatever line that lies ahead. Again, because this was the point where nobody knew when he was going to come back. And again, he hasn't spoken to anybody. And so then I said, thank you, bro. I said, can I say I got this from you, or I'm being transparent with you? Is this a sources situation, or I got this from you? He said, you spoke to me. So my first hit during the game, I was able to say, I received a text message from the LeBron hasn't spoke, his foot, nobody doesn't know what's going on, but I received a text from LeBron James, and I read the text, on air, during the game about what he said. And again, not breaking news, but I'm bringing to the forefront my relationships that I have.
Yeah.
And what I'm able to, leverage those and put those on display. And so I learned to love breaking news or unearthing some type of news on that type of a stage, on that platform. And I couldn't do that without the relationships. And that was key. I just, that's something I just fell in love with.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And it's just a different dynamic than just there's more to it than obviously just talking to the players that are on the sideline there during the game. So that is a cool, unique perspective to bring to that role. What happened earlier this year when Lefko had the Doc Rivers to the Bucks story and said it was attributed to CNN Sports at the time? Obviously that whole thing, it ended up being true. I think it was the next day that the deal was officially announced, but it seemed like the social media reaction was more about what is CNN Sports than it was the Doc Rivers news. And then I think that same night you had reported at the time that the deal was not done. So was there any backlash just about the fact that you both had conflicting reports and were working for the same company?
Well, that wasn't Lefko's news. He was relaying.
Right. He was kind of reciting it from CNN Sports.
And I don't know who that is. I still don't know who that is.
Right. And that's pretty much what the social media reaction was like. Everyone was just like, what is CNN Sports? Like, it seemed like a a bit of a joke at first.
Yeah, I didn't know who that is. I still don't know. I trust my source. I had a very good source on that.
So from your perspective at that moment, the deal wasn't done.
No, I mean, it was going to get done.
Yeah.
But at that moment, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, it was a matter of, I think the deal became official like 2 days later or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was headed in that direction. But at that moment, I was told, and many others were told, that that wasn't the case. And as far as my source was gold on that. I felt really good about that one. They don't get no closer than that source I had.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. So then did you hear it all from anyone at Warner Brothers Discovery? Just the fact that like you had CNN Sports reporting that it was done, and then here you are, their insider, saying no, it's not done. That you had those conflicting reports. Somebody
came up to me and asked, like, how did this all happen? And I explained it to you like I explained to them like I explained to you.
Yeah.
But no, there was nothing that came about it. They were just asked, like, because they were confused as well.
Yeah.
But nothing came about it. Like, there was no, okay, like, well, this is the protocol mandate.
Right. Like we have to get on the same page.
Nah, it was just a weird, like, because again, who is it? Who is CNN Sports? Who is this individual? Like, I remember when I was looking, before you report things, you want to know first and foremost, like if I get some news information, first thing I do is look and research if this is out already.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. And so I'm looking for this CNN Sports. I'm like, okay, who was the guy? Okay, I keep seeing this, and I can't find the guy or the woman responsible for this report. And so I'm thinking it's fake news. That's what I'm thinking, And so I would just say this. It bothered somebody so much about that news that they reached out to me.
Okay.
To relay that.
Yeah, no, it was definitely an interesting night for sure.
Yeah, again, my source is pretty
close.
Come on now, come on, B. Read between the lines, B.
Yeah, I got you. Last thing, is there a report or a story or an interview, something from your career that you've done that you are most proud of?
That's a great question. Most proud of. I thought you were going to go the other way.
If you wanna go the other way and tell me something that you least proud of or got wrong, we'll take that too. But I still would want to come back to this part.
All right. Well, let me give you the least first. I got to think about the story I'm most proud of. The one I'm the least proud of, it was embarrassing. It was terrifying. It was all completely avoidable. So this will be and I don't mind telling this story because, I think it could be a learning experience for somebody else. And I was offered so much grace even after the fact. So this is my second year covering the league, covering the Portland Trail Blazers. And Mo Williams gets signed to the Portland Trail Blazers. And at that time, Mo, one of the best backup point guards in the league. And so it was a great addition. But at some point during the season, it became known to us that Mo had a sister that was really sick. And at some point during the season, he would have to take a little extended absence to go be by her side. So we all knew that was like kind of in the background. So I remember we're on the road and we're in Indiana and the Blazers are practicing. They have a game the next day. So this is the first game of a road trip. So the Blazers are practicing. At that time, it was called Conseco Fieldhouse. And so the media, which is very small media, so it's like me and two other local Portland media individuals, we're waiting in the concourse because that's where we have to wait until they open it up for us to go in and talk to players. So while we're waiting in the concourse area, I get a call. Can I say this and that? So I get a call from a Blazer employee who travels with the team, like on flights with the team. I get a call that, hey, Mo Williams, I just saw Mo Williams leave town. His sister passed. He's going to be with family. And B, this is at the point where I'm like really fixated on news, fixated on news breaking, fixated especially on my beat. Like this is what I do. And so I tell my source, thank you, great. Again, this is a guy who is with the team, travels with them. He just seen him leave, said Mo Williams' sister has passed. So I go and write a quick story in the concourse real quick. Mo Williams' sister has passed. Mo just left town to go, I believe it might have been Alabama. And he will miss the game. He will miss miss tomorrow's game. So I broke that, tweeted out. About 5 minutes later, Jim Taylor, who at that time was the Blazers' head PR guy, comes in. He asked me, because I'm around two other beat guys who I'm like breaking the news in front of them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's always, when you can break something in front of people, it has a different feel to it. You get to see their reaction. And so I'm right there, broke it, feeling, it's whatever. It's a tough situation. Anyway, so Jim Taylor comes and asks, hey, Chris, can I talk to you over here? So he pulls me away from everybody. And so I'm thinking he's going to tell me, why did you have to go with this? We wanted to put this out in a certain time. That's where I think he was headed. But he tells me, Chris, Mo Williams' sister did not pass. He just wanted to go be with her. She's dealing with the same thing. She did not pass. I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, this is ridiculous. So I'm like, man, all right, I'm sorry. Now I got to go back, retract. And at that point, my competitors hear about it right there. So they're looking at me kind of like, oh. So I have to retract. And social media at that time, this is 11, 12 season, whatever. It wasn't as toxic as it is now.
Yeah.
But it was bad. The response was bad. It was bad. It was bad. So I'm retracting, issuing an apology. Then the gym opens up. It's time for us to go in. So as soon as I go into the gym, LaMarcus Aldridge, Nicholas Batum, just staring at me like with disgust. Wesley Matthews at the time. And I had to go in there and eat that. Right? And I'm talking to LaMarcus. He was like, bro, LaMarcus telling me, bro, how could you do that? I'm like, man, I'm sorry, bro. Somebody I trusted gave me some bad information. And I was so trigger happy to break a story. I didn't think it all the way through. I'm sorry. And LaMarcus said something to me at that time that made it even worse. He was like, bro, what if she passes? She does end up passing. It's like your story, like, put it into the atmosphere.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, oh, man. So I'm like, oh, man. So then at that point, I'm desperately trying to get in touch with Mo. I'm trying to apologize. I'm trying to get this out and then tell him how sorry I am. And he's not responding. And he didn't. I think we were on like a 4-game road trip. He did not come back during that road trip. A few weeks later, he rejoined the team in Portland, and I knew he was there. I knew he was in the locker room. So I knew everybody is waiting Everybody's heard about this. Everybody knows about this in the market. So we're back in Portland. And usually I go into a locker room by myself. This time I'm going to the locker room. There's a bunch of other media going in. They want to see what's going to happen. And I'm like, I got to face it. Like, I'm going to get cussed out in front of everybody. You know, they're going to be able to laugh at it and, you know, have fun with it. But I gotta take it. I go in the locker room. Mo is there. I said, Mo, brother, I am so sorry. I received some information. I'm pretty sure you know what happened, but I just told him. I reported this. I'm terribly sorry, man. I'm not trying to wish or put anything in the atmosphere that's going to make something catastrophic for you and your family. It was very stupid of me. I apologize, bro. I will hope over time you forgive me, man. This will never, ever happen again. This was definitely a learning experience. He was like, bro, it's good. I appreciate you for coming to me, man. Thank you. And he hugged me in front of everybody. And B, that was a reaction I did not even think could even remotely happen. Wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah.
He let me off the hook.
Yeah,
I was going in there. Yeah, I was going in there prepared to get cussed out in front of the players.
Yeah.
In front of my colleagues. And he did that, man. Showed me that grace. And we became tighter after that. He's one of my closest guys. And he ended up signing with the Cavs.
Yeah.
I was covering them. And so we came, you know, it was cool again. I had my dog back in the locker room. But this is the learning experience, B. Again, this is my second year covering the league. I didn't know all the ropes. Again, I'm learning on the fly.
Yeah.
With everything. The learning experience from that was I had a good source. He was right about Mo leaving town to deal with a family matter. The news to break at that time was Mo left town to tend to a family matter, and he will miss tomorrow's game. That's the news. Me doing what I did, imagine this had to have happened. I mean, I didn't have a big following back then, but, you know, think of his family members.
Yeah.
Who are so-called learning about this tragedy on social media, this tragedy that didn't happen. I thought about all of that after the fact. I was like, I completely blew that. The news was he's going to tend to a family matter and he will miss tomorrow's game. That's it. That's the learning experience.
Yeah.
Deciphering what you should report, what you should probably go deeper on, and what not to report.
Yeah. Yeah. You get caught up in the breaking news aspect and you almost forget about the personal aspect of something like that. Definitely.
But he showed me so much grace, man. So much grace. I'm supposed to go visit him at the, you know, he's a coach now.
Yeah.
At Jackson State. So I'm supposed to go visit the team and talk to him. So I got to make that happen, man. That's my guy.
That's cool. That's cool that you actually build a relationship off of something like that, though. That's really, really nice of Mo to take it that way. All right, give me something that you're proud of then. Something that I'm proud of.
I'm proud of there's a lot of stories that I've done that I'm proud of. I would say this. This was my first year in the league. And I'm pretty sure when we're done with this pod, another story will come off that probably I would consider more significant than this one. But this one stands out because this story, my first year, involves Nicholas Batum, who I'm still close with to this day. He wasn't like he wasn't one of their main go-to players at the time.
Yeah.
He was talented, 6'8", can dribble, shoot, defend multiple positions. But, Nate McMillan was the head coach, and Nate is known for playing his veteran guys. And even though Nick got some consistent playing time, it wasn't the time that he wanted or people thought he should have at that point. But the way locker rooms work, again, remember, I was very observant of how people did their jobs. LaMarcus Aldridge and Brandon Roy, they were the big names back then. Greg Oden, they were the big names. And so people will automatically just go to them. So you'll have 20-something people at that one player. And it was to the point where I would see that all the time, and I would think that must be the locker room protocol, that you only can go to one player at a time. And so this game, Platoon was off. He was like, he was like 0 for 6. He didn't shoot that much. He just looked really disengaged. Like that whole game, just really disengaged. But that was just in my mind. That just stuck out to me. And so the locker room opens up. And again, I'm not thinking about Platoon being disengaged, but I noticed that during the game. Locker room opens up. Everybody is over to LaMarcus Aldridge's locker. Everybody's over. And I'm not over there. I'm like in the middle of the locker room, just like looking around. And I just noticed Platoon is at his stall. He's on his phone, and he's like frantically texting somebody. It's like I can tell something is going on. So I wait until he stops texting. He's by himself. So I wait till he stops texting. And I go over there, and I'm like, hey, Nick, you cool? And his seeing him frantically texting like that, I think back to how I saw him playing. I'm like, hey, Nick, you good, man? You didn't look like yourself out there today. And B, he just poured out to me. He says his sister and his mother were traveling from France to come be at the game tonight, and they didn't make it. And he said, so throughout the game, he's looking for them and didn't find them. He said, so at halftime, he got a text at halftime. I don't know if it was from his mom, his sister, or a relative, that his mom and his sister were arrested at the airport, and they were in customs, and they were like in jail, in the holding cell. So he found out this information. It was something to do with traveling. I don't know. I don't know why. I think it was like they suspected him of something, whatever. But they were in the clear. But at halftime, that's the news he got. And so now he's going and playing like he don't know what's happening with his sister and his mother. All he knows is that they're in jail. He don't know what for, what's going on. And so he's pouring out to me, telling me all this information. And again, I've developed relationships with him to that point to where he felt comfortable. And so at first, I'm just hearing him out. I'm talking. I'm like, oh, man, I'm sorry, bro. I pray for you, bro. I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that, man. I hope you get everything right. Yeah, he's, yeah, I'm still working on it. I'm trying to figure something out. And so I leave for a moment. Then I come back. I say, Nick, I don't mean to be insensitive, but is this any information you want out? He said, you know what? Yeah, I want out. I want it out to show how we're being treated, as foreigners coming into this country, blah, blah, blah. And he let me run with that, gave me quotes. And B, that story just took over whatever happened at this game. Forget the game. That story took over, and that was my first story that made it onto ESPN. ESPN had to, how ESPN back then, they didn't really credit other outlets back then. But this was such an international story at the time that it made it, like CNN. This became beyond sports. And Nick entrusted me enough to go with that and share those personal details. And that was a big story. And so even my competitors had to reference my story.
Right.
And, So that was my first big story that it didn't even involve a big superstar name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was like the story I was most proud of because it came based off of a pre-existing relationship that I had with them and just observing something. Like sometimes you may observe something in the game and you keep it as a mental note, or you may even write it down. But that night it was just a mental note. And then when I seen him frantically texting, his performance came in my head. I'm like, okay, something's going on.
Yeah.
So there's way more other stories, but that was my first big story. And there's not a lot of stories that come out of Portland that become national. Then. And that became like a national story.
Yeah, no, and it's just it's cool, and I think it's a testament to you to be able to build those relationships, and especially at that point, so earlier in your career too, for sure, definitely a unique story, a unique rise in the industry as well, and a lot of credit to you for that, because your whole backstory is super impressive.
I appreciate that, B. Hopefully, I just want to. I'm not your traditional TV sports reporter, sideline reporter. I'm not polished, but I just attended the National Association of Black Journalists convention we had last week, and you might have heard about it, B. We had a guest there last week. But they have the youngsters.
Were you there for that?
I was there, but I didn't go in the room.
You weren't in the room.
Nah, I didn't want. I just didn't want to be associated with it. I didn't want to have pictures taken and potentially be a prop. I didn't attend it. But being there, it's all these aspiring journalists that want to come up and and do what you do, and it's when you're in the thick of things and you're trying to do your job, you may have, like when I'm doing a hit, I may have it in my mind how I want to say it, and then it may not come out the way I wanted it to say. It may not come out the way I intended it to.
Yeah.
But to the viewer, they don't know how it intended to come out, and so to them, you didn't make a mistake. But to me, so I'm extra hard on myself because I want it to come out exactly the way I practice or the way that I want it to be relayed. And so I'm always hard on myself about that. And so then you see these kids is graduated from college or just graduated or maybe still in college tell you, man, like, you give me hope. Like, I love how you do it, the way you do it differently. And I want to do it that way, man. It's to the point where, like, real talk, like it'll lightweight bring a tear to your eye, man. Like, it's like, I don't think about them. Yeah. I'm always in my head on, like, okay, how can I make this better? And to see them looking up to me in that way, and I'm like, dang. Like, this is a pretty cool moment. It's a pretty cool time to be doing this. And so, I just appreciate that. It's always humbling to see how you affect other people that you don't even know.
Chris, you were great. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
B, appreciate you taking the time, man. You take care.
Of course. That is Chris Haynes. I'm Brandon Contes. This is the Awful Announcing Podcast. Please rate and subscribe to this podcast. Please also subscribe to Awful Announcing's YouTube page. But regardless of how you consume Awful Announcing and the Awful Announcing Podcast, thanks for listening and be good.
Thanks for listening to the Awful Announcing Podcast. For the latest news spanning the sports media landscape and more, check out awfulannouncing.com and follow us at Awful Announcing.